All right, Tuesday morning, week 2. Good morning, Jenny. Good morning, Scott. Good morning, Nick.
Morning, David.
We're here
It's
too,
early,
Nick.
isn't it?
We're here too. Good morning. Good morning, Scott and Jenny. Oh, thanks. Morning, Nick.
You had your chance. I waited my turn.
How are you, Nick? You're not on the road.
No, I'm sleeping well now. Thanks for asking.
Good. And what's up?
Some new numbers this morning from our friends at Abacus Data. And I have a feeling over at Conservative HQ, they might be sort of happy about them. Aaron Otoole is the guy who nobody in the country knows, and that's been the narrative since forever. And they have these numbers that say after a week of his platform and his person being out there, sometimes leaving Ottawa, that his numbers are going up. And he's got a positive rating of 26%, which is 6 points higher than it was last week. And his negatives seem to have plateaued just above 40%. So
Right.
that's not bad news for him. Jagmeet Singh in the same poll has, of course, as he always does, he has the biggest gap between his positives and his negatives. And the Prime Minister is, he's sort of dueling positives and negatives, 42, 39 negative positive right now. And last week it was a little bit different. The week before that was a little bit different. But Otoole has the clearest sort of uptick that's anywhere noticeable.
Oh, the Liberals have him as
Politico
exactly
declares the Big Mo.
I don't know. I make no declarations. I only look at charts, and my feeble mind says that line went up.
Jenny, what were you going to say?
I was going to say the Liberals have the Conservatives exactly where you guys want them. Like the momentum of a week 2 to just try to like slap them down.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the plan all along.
You bet. Build
Nick,
up their
where's
hopes,
Enemy Paul
then
today?
crash them.
No, we know where she is.
Yeah. I mean, there's potential for her to leave the province, but for now, no such luck.
Okay. What else? What's everybody else doing?
2 leaders are in Hamilton today, which is a hotbed of 4 ridings, but 4 important ridings. Trudeau is there this morning, and he's making an announcement. And then a little later in the day, Jagmeet Singh is showing up in town, and he's going to be campaigning with Andrea Horwath and a bunch of local candidates. Jagmeet's then heading to southwestern Ontario, and he's going to end the day in Amherstburg, down by Windsor. So he's doing a swing through the southwest, where there was a poll that says the NDP has the lead among the major parties. Aaron Otoole.
I want to see the poll that has a reliable southwest Ontario sample.
Yeah, well,
I want to hear the non-internal party poll that has a reliable southwest Ontario sample.
In the playbook this morning, I did note that the sample was 324 people. So it's, there's an asterisk beside that poll, but he's headed there. Aaron Otoole is headed today nowhere. He is in Ottawa. He's doing some town halls, as he does, making an announcement this morning, as he does.
Virtual town halls. They're not even as good as Ignatieff's town halls because they're not even in person. You can't rise up. You can only rise up graphically.
When are you back on the road, brother?
As soon as my boss will let me go. So if you can talk to her, that'd be great.
Come on, Sue. Come on, buy the guy a bus
boss
ticket.
is. I don't even know your boss. I'm not carrying any water for you. Jesus, I got my own issues.
He's been stuck at a cottage since April of 2017 or something.
I know. Should have been hiding there longer. All right, Nick, thanks for coming out this morning. See you tomorrow.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
Give us the crack, David. Give us the crack cocaine.
So, just to clarify, it was my error. EKOS late last week moved to a 4-day roll on their tracking program so that they'd have more stability and reliability on their regional samples. So, they're on a 4-day rolling system. So, that's 1,030 cases today over the last 4 days. And it says Conservatives 33, Liberals 32, NDP 20, Greens 3.5, People's Party 5, Bloc Québécois 6.
It's interesting. It seems like for Frank's top line numbers, at least, there was a big correction at some point in the first week. And it's been, I know it sounds goofy, but it feels like it's been relatively stable since that correction. There was a big moment where the two leading parties ended up at 32, 33, 33, 32, somewhere in there. And then not much has
happened over about
since.
4 days.
Okay.
Happened over about 4 days. Yeah, the Liberal numbers are not continuing to fall, but they are stable at a pretty low level.
Essentially what they got last election. They got 30% last election.
Right.
32 is,
but that's a really low water mark for a Liberal vote.
That's almost core, right? Like that's pretty well core for a Liberal.
Well, we don't have a core. We've discovered that.
That's true. Not you and
Other parties have cores. We don't have a core.
I have no core.
We're coreless.
Well, you got to take Pilates. You got to strengthen your core. Come on. Got to dirty dog my way to a better, more resilient campaign posture.
Anyway, Frank, thanks for the data. Keeping us alert here. So I would agree with I would agree obviously with Nick that on balance the Conservatives have to be happy with where the polling data is at this stage of the campaign.
Yeah, I'd be happy, and I'd also be really fucking nervous. Like it's week 2. It's been such a weird change within a week. So I think they should be happy, but I think there should be with a bit of nervous optimism as well, because we all know what week two polls can turn into.
I know. It's a little, you're right. It's a little unnerving when something happens, even good for you in politics, and you don't really know why it happened. Mm-hmm. So you don't really know how to sustain it or how to drive it.
Like,
sorry, go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was going to say, because I think maybe other people would be curious to hear you as a researcher explain this, David, because you hear two things right now. You hear, one, nobody's paying any attention, and two, you hear that these numbers have corrected. How can those two things coexist? Like, if no one's paying attention, how come the numbers are moving? Shouldn't they be static because no one's paying attention? And if no one's paying attention and the numbers are moving, what does that mean in terms of the rest of the campaign?
Well, I think when we say people aren't paying attention, we're talking about our standards of paying attention. It's not like people aren't picking up any information about the campaign. They are. They told me in my focus group where they're getting it from and what kind of information they're picking up. And it's enough for them to form judgments. They don't know. They don't follow it closely at the best of times, right? And so I think people are following it enough to get information. What the information that they've picked up has given them, some of them at least, a reason to move. So I don't, if you're waiting for people to read the platforms, that's not going to happen in terms of paying attention to the campaign.
Neither Jenny nor I have read any of the platforms. We're not interested in that kind of minutia. We go on political analysis. We catch the zeitgeist.
I'll be honest with you, I did read the Conservative platform.
I'm kidding. I did too.
People tell me that in focus groups all the time. I'm going to wait until I read the platform to make my mind up. Yeah.
I was enjoying your new pod. I was enjoying your new the second week edition of the focus group, because you reached the critical point in the focus group that I always enjoy, especially when I'm watching you moderate, which is that someone goes rooster on the group and tries to tell people what everyone else should think and try to lead it around, and then you have to slap that person down and go, all right, back on off now. I'm listening to her, not you. Quit telling people what to think. That's my fucking job to tell people what to think. We reached that about midway through yesterday's session, and you had to slap someone down. It was very entertaining.
I feel that's how I would be if I was in a focus group. I would love to be focus grouped someday.
I'd sandbag.
Yeah.
I would wait. I wouldn't go out. I'd be reluctant to express my views, and I'd wait, and then I would sneak up on people and then try to overtake it with the power of my argument. I wouldn't try to force my way. I've got strategies.
I'll bet $1 million that's not what you would do. I'll bet $1 million that you are incapable of doing that.
Hey everybody! I have good thoughts. So shoot go first. My go first good thoughts. Everybody, want to listen to me?
It's funny. Elections are one of those times where, even in disagreement, Canadians come together to connect over where we're headed in the future. Our presenting sponsor, TELUS, makes it their mission to make digital connectivity more powerful and reliable, and to connect Canadians living in remote, rural, and Indigenous communities. In fact, since 2013, they've invested over $5 billion to connect 137 communities and 56 First Nations across BC, Alberta, and parts of Quebec to their world-leading pure fiber network. Have you ever heard of Eden Valley, Alberta? It's known for its gorgeous terrain of hills, valleys, and highly unreliable cell signals because of those hills and valleys. When COVID hit, there was an outbreak at a local packing plant. 18 members of the Bearspaw First Nation working in the plant tested positive. Immediate communication with Alberta public health officials became critical. So TELUS quickly deployed a powerful cell site on wheels. They call it a cow, normally used for one-off occasions. Community leaders got to work tracing contacts and limiting spread of the virus. Supports were put in place for families as those who tested positive went into isolation. The key to it all? Flawless connectivity between residents, families, and public health. And as for the future, TELUS believes we must work urgently and collaboratively to ensure that 100% of Canadians and Indigenous peoples living in Canada, including rural Canadian and Indigenous communities, can get access to reliable, high-speed broadband networks and connectivity by 2025. You can find out more about all this at telus.com/connectingcanada. All right. So healthcare yesterday seemed to emerge as the issue that the Liberals want to drive the wedge on. Same wedge as 2000, same wedge as 2004. It's back. First of all, let's talk about it. What do you think? How did it work yesterday?
Well,
I'll start. I think that they sort of.
Okay.
I thought they were dead after the video clip. But yeah, no, whatever. I'm just trying to talk while I can on this pod. I thought the Liberals did a reasonable job of with some help from Otoole, did a reasonable job of resuscitating that issue yesterday after the failure of the Freeland video.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that I thought the video was terrible. If I was Christopher Freeland, I would be extremely angry that the war room sent me out on it. If I also didn't then look like a lunatic in my own video talking about it. So I think that was bad, but they've obviously made the decision that any attention is good attention. Any media is good media kind of thing. And I would assume that they must be seeing numbers, or they must be hearing from candidates that this issue is compelling, because otherwise I'm not sure why they continue going on it.
So I thought there were two lessons to take from it. Like you guys, I thought that it was impressive that the Liberal campaign was able to stick with it and power it. And by the end of the day, force Otoole onto his back foot on it. So I thought that was impressive. They didn't blink. They kept going. I mean, obviously it tells us that they cocked up day one. And I think they cocked up day one in a couple ways that are less obvious. Yes, they cocked up the video. Obviously, you didn't need to edit that video. You could have put the video out in whole and driven your point, because your point wasn't just what he was saying in the video. Your point was the underlying philosophy, which is kind of my criticism of how they executed. I think in the success of late yesterday, we see the failure the day before, because really what it comes down to is, are you going to withhold payments? Like, are you going to deem Saskatchewan in the way that it's approached MRIs to be inappropriate? And are you going to withhold payments? They didn't come out and say that. They could have said on day one, look at this video. This is what it means. And here's what we would do as a government. We're going to say, no, we're going to put an end to that. And they're going to open themselves up the question of, well, how come you didn't then? But whatever, you got it going. It took them until last night when they issued a statement at like whatever it was, 9 o'clock, to finally get around to saying we're going to withhold payments. Now they've got Otoole on the run on this thing, because Otoole won't withhold payments. Otoole's going to say, I'm going to permit that level of experimentation. And now you could have an argument about whether that level of experimentation fits with people's concept of public care. So it took them a while to lurch their way to it, that bad video, some inexact messaging. But I think they've got Otoole on the run on this thing now. And so my big question is, I know today they're making a huge announcement on housing. And it looks to me like they threw out their March budget template, and they're doing some original. They've made up some new policy on housing. We'll see how it plays. Heather Schofield has a good column on it today, and I'm going to be curious to see. I mean, there's a G7 NATO. There's a G7 leaders on Afghan. So on the Afghan excavation. So the Prime Minister's got to do that. They want to do housing, and I think they need to keep on this healthcare thing. How do they balance all those things and pull them off in this crowded, cluttered news cycle? So it'll be a day to watch whether. But if they abandon healthcare, they'll have made a mistake now that they've invested 2 days in it.
So former Trudeau advisor Jerry Butts tweeted yesterday something that seemed to imply that the campaign should stay positive. And not become too negative about the Conservatives, but stay on a positive track.
That worked. That really worked for the last election.
Well, Jerry's been right about so many things in politics, and he was quite right about this in 2015. I'm reluctant to sort of go at it, but I sort of have a general feeling that when you win your first election, you can win it on the prospect that you are a brand new, exciting, inspiring change agent. But when you're running for your third mandate, you really only get elected if the alternative is unacceptable. And that's if you look at how Pierre Trudeau won in 1974, or Chrétien won in 2000, or even we won in 2004, it's by disqualifying the opponent, because people are starting to look for change and people are starting to look for something more interesting to them again. You got a thought on this? Do they have...
Yeah, if Trudeau, I think the biggest mistake of the 2019 campaign, if Trudeau had actually gone negative, if like they went a bit in the pre-writ on Andrew, but if they'd actually gone negative, they would have probably won a majority. So it's actually like, if I was Trudeau, I'd be sitting around at my advisors and said, give me some new fucking ideas, because I could have had a majority government 2 years ago, and this Sunny Ways bullshit just doesn't work.
So I'm a little bit in between, and which sounds like a real half-assed answer, but I'll explain it. First and foremost, I'm Scotty Bowman on this, and by that I mean you come every night and you look at the ingredients that are ahead in front of you, and you say, what does it take to win on this night with this assemblage of players against the people I'm playing against? So there are no hard and fast rules which say, well, if it's Justin Trudeau, we are always positive because that's what works for Justin Trudeau. No, it worked, I think, as you say, in 2015, and worked fabulously, David, because he was an insurgent candidacy and all of our hopes could be vested. And now he's got 6 years of incumbency attached to him, and it's less simple to just win on soaring rhetoric. In fact, I think we've seen the limits of soaring rhetoric in the first few days of the campaign. That being said, so I don't think that I think you got to go negative. I think you had to do abortion, should have stuck with it longer. I think you got to stick with healthcare now that you've got some separation on it. But I still think, as I've been saying all week, that I still think that the Liberals have to come around and say, here's the fundamental bargain for voting Liberal, and that can be notionally more positive, but you gotta make that argument. Housing is a perfect way into that argument, because housing is at the tip of the spear of public anxiety right now. And so it's this kind of issue that I need people to say, I'm on your side on this thing, and I can carry it in after this election to say, sorry, people who disagree with me, but the people spoke and I've got their support. Like, I think that's what's missing. But a pure, a pure positive campaign where you don't take advantage of these opportunities, I don't think you can afford that luxury right now.
The announcement yesterday, the Liberal announcement yesterday, the healthcare announcement, is a perfect example of one of my fucking worst bugaboos about mostly government announcements, but the way political parties talk about issues. So they said, we've got $6 billion to reduce wait times, and we're going to expand the number of doctors by 7,500 or something. I can't remember the number. That's the point. That's my point. $6 billion for wait times. Is that a lot or a little? Is that going to fix wait times? Is that going to fix wait times at one hospital? I don't fucking know what I get for that. And it gets so ridiculous. I saw Kathleen Petty, who thankfully is hosting Power in Politics, turn to one panelist she had on yesterday and say, and how many billion do you have for this? I mean, that's where it's at now. So outcomes, that's what voters are interested in. What's going to be achieved by this policy. And they're going to do it again today. They're going to say several $1 billion for X number of houses. Well, how many houses do we need? Like, what's going to happen at the end of your policy? That's really what you got to get to.
There's a policy in their announcement supposedly today, according to Heather Schofield of the Star, that will, that they'll trumpet, which is a homeowner's bill of rights. I hope they don't place the emphasis on that. I hate those goddamn things. That stuff it's such tissue paper, and everybody knows it. And when you sit in government, you kind of go, well, what we'll do is we'll have an air traveler's bill of rights. I mean, how many governments are you? Like, I think your government, Jenny, talked about bringing that in, and then we did it or didn't do it. I don't even know, right? But all I know this is it still sucks when you travel. And so, I would focus hardcore on what are the measures that are going to that are going to generate supply. That's, and you got to tell people this is the problem in housing. This is how you get the outcome of lower prices, or at least of accessibility into the housing market for your kids. And
so
a homeowner's bill of rights. Give me a break.
But the fact of the matter, are they not going to have to pressure municipalities into like allowing there to be more supply? Like ultimately, like for a housing policy for anyone, like it's NIMBYism and it's municipal governments that are preventing more homes from being built.
For sure, I don't know the full scope of what they're going to recommend today. There's all sorts of things.
I don't know what Ottawa can do about that.
Well, I think you can give incentives. You can create incentives. You can take our buddy John's idea and say, let's have a national summit and bully people into saying, we have a consensus on this in terms of building more supply. You can.
Yeah, but the politics of it is ultimately so local.
Yeah,
100%.
You can
politics of it is so local.
There's a squillion boomers who are not leaving their houses as economists predicted 15 years ago. You could create incentives for them financially to leave. Again, I have no idea what they're going to announce today, but you could be saying to people, there are tax advantages if you do get your home into the hands of the next generation. There's stuff that could be done.
So if you're listening to this, you're somebody who tracks every shift, every nuance of all the campaigns. Who's promising what? Which promises were kept after the last election? What's most important to voters? Who performed best during the pandemic? And of course, good old change, agents of change, bringers of change, the need for real change, etc., etc. It would be cynical here for me to add that politics doesn't really change much, so I won't. Anyway, our sponsor CN wants to say a few things. First, it's running on its record. CN trains deliver the goods, literally, every day, dependably and safely and on time. I know I've said this before, but if you have it, a train almost certainly brought it. Your car, the materials used to build your home, a lot of your groceries, most of your consumer goods, the full list. The economy would literally grind to a full stop if the train stopped running. CN would also like to point out that it performed pretty much flawlessly during the pandemic. Right from day one, CN railroaders showed up for work, keeping the veins and arteries of the economy clear and moving. Yes, they were stressed, like everyone else. But trains got to move. And the change thing? Well, CN has grown and intends to keep growing. It means to become the first truly North American railway, merging with Kansas City Southern to include Mexico in its Canada-US network. And it's worked hard to become steadily more efficient and more precise and a good deal safer. But the basic job has not changed and will not change. CN promises you that. Foreign supply chains are disrupted and choked, but not the railways. CN trains enable our way of life, and roll they will. Jenny, why do the Conservatives keep losing campaigns over healthcare? Why don't they just seal that off airtight? Like, why do they have to keep leaving this room on private that the Liberals can exploit election after election?
Well, we didn't. We won 3 in a row, one against you guys, and then 2 after that. So.
No, I'm not saying you can't win elections, but I'm saying the notion of private healthcare has stumbled the party up more than once, right?
Yeah, it's been an issue the Conservatives have had to deal with, and so because you guys make it more of an issue than what it actually is, and there is a lot of people sympathetic, I think, to the position. Anyone that's kind of had a family member or been through the system knows that there are a lot of a lot of failures within the system. So even people that are fully supportive of public health care have seen deficiencies when they've had to deal within the system. And so I think that's kind of the people that probably politicians are reaching out to, because anyone that's had a major catastrophe. One of my best friends, her brother is essentially quadriplegic now from an accident 3 years ago, and it actually his actual major injuries were sustained after he was in the hospital, the transporting him from a smaller hospital to Toronto. And so people have had to deal with this. And I think that's kind of what political parties are having to deal with. But I think it's unfair to say that like this is affecting Otoole at the polls right now. It's anything but. He's actually increased in the polls in the last 4 or 5 days that the Liberals have been going on this. So I assume they think it's an issue because they're continuing to drive it. But I hope they better have more game than this attack if they want to come out and win a majority, which is obviously what they want.
Well, we'll see. I don't think this last punch, because it didn't really get good until late yesterday, will not yet show up in the polls, and we'll see. I think my bet is that it's got some traction because it's been demonstrated in the past to have some traction. And I just think, I think Conservatives have to be ruthless about this issue. I think they have to take a page out of Jim Flaherty's book in 2011. And, in 2011, you guys came forward and your platform was kind of silent on whether or not you would renew as part of the health transfer, the 6% escalator. We're back to talking about that now. Oddly enough, it was Trudeau was asked a question about it yesterday. And there was a day of futzing around. And then your campaign said, we are not fucking around with this hot potato in the middle of this 2011 election. And Flaherty just came out and said, okay, 6% is going to be approved. And that cleavage was taken off the table and made unavailable to the Liberals in the 2011 election. And I think that was a ruthless and smart decision, and helped ensure that the Liberals couldn't get traction and you guys went on to have a majority. And I think Otoole should have done the same thing yesterday. And I think he's going to be chased around on the question of, withholding payments and MRIs and what level of experimentation. And my argument would be, guys, you know what? We will deal with that stuff when we're in government. We'll see what level of experimentation we permit, but we're not going to have this argument on principles in the middle of a campaign, because they could shove it up our ass, and that's not smart.
I also think, and I know I'm kind of segueing, David, so I apologize, but I also think that they should recalibrate how they're doing tour, and Aaron should be out and about more. He actually had some good events at the latter part of last week. He's good in front of people. It just looks better. It feels better. I think it's sterile in the studio, and I think that they're obviously they're very wedded to this studio idea. Like they're very proud of themselves with it. But I think that the best days of Aaron's campaign last week were when he was out and about, when he had his wife Rebecca, when he had the kids out. I think it's a lot better than just being in the indoctrination center.
Well, sterile as it may be in L. Ron Hubbard's suite there, I thought Otoole did the most interesting thing yesterday. His proposal for worker representation on the boards of federally regulated companies is interesting for a lot of reasons. First, it's an interesting policy in its own right. Kind of surprised, haven't heard it from anybody else. Second of all, it's really interesting coming from him. And third of all, doesn't it come from the Boris Johnson playbook about how Conservatives can attract working class votes?
David, so, what person is voting on that? It was interesting, I guess, but I cannot think of one voter demographic or one segment that is going to vote that they think that's going to be their driving issue to the polls. I think yesterday was a wasted announcement for him, which is part of the reason why healthcare ended up consuming the media, is because there was a vacuum from the Conservative campaign.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do they not think that was part? Do they not think, Jenny, that was part of Johnson's appeal to the labor strongholds that he won in the last election? That he seemed worker friendly, and Otoole has wanted to seem labor friendly since he became leader.
Yeah, 100%. But it's we're not the UK. It's the even in the elections that he picked up, that Johnson picked up in May, those are like, we have a much very different, like what you would look at Labour or left wing vote in this country. The NDP voter in St. John's, Hamilton, Thunder Bay, and Burnaby are very different people. Very different people. It's less so. It's more in the UK. It's more. It's more. They're more the same. And so I think that I know what the campaign is trying to do. I just don't think that it's going to work. I just don't see anyone going, oh wow, well, someone can be on the board of Air Canada and WestJet now, what are they gonna? The steward is going to end up being on. Like, it's just, I don't think that's driving anyone to the polls.
Yeah, I think the UK is a different.
Scott, isn't there any merit for Otoole in just doing something against type, just to break out of the rigidity of the Conservative mold for some voters?
Well, I don't think there is rigidity. I think we've had a lot of change and we've had a lot of success over the last 20 years. So I think that's unfair to say that. I think that if you're doing something just to kind of break the mold, you're wasting a day on the campaign.
I have a slightly different take. I agree that yesterday didn't penetrate and it won't drive votes. And I agree that the UK is a different political culture because the connection between labor and unionized workers and union movement overall is still stronger there than it is here. It's really deteriorated here, particularly in private sector unions. But I've always thought that Otoole, that the fundamental idea of one of the ways to try to chip away at the lunch bucket vote is to align with private sector unions. I thought that made sense. And I don't think that he's gone about it very effectively. My complaint would be he needed to do this. He started it when he talked about it during his leadership, and then he got some internal pushback, and he kind of abandoned that discussion. And in order for it to pay off in the campaign and let yesterday not be a non-day, he had to have been doing more of it prior to his leadership, trying to establish himself as here's one of the proof points that I'm a different kind of conservative. I think the inability to establish that as a narrative, even among media and close observers, meant that yesterday probably wouldn't amount to much. But as an overall strategy, like if he was to win this election and even end up as a minority prime minister, if he started to pursue that, I think that's a smart little piece of coalition creation, and that I would chip away at if I were him.
But conservatives win private sector union. They win working class people when they actually have policies that appeal to them. We did in 11, we did in 18 provincially, and so I think that like doing specific policies that you think are just that union members are going to like, I think you're missing the play. I think that people in private sector unions actually just want, how are you going to make my life better? And putting someone on a board is not making my life better. What are you going to do? What are you going to do for my day-to-day?
Okay, listen, sitting in your ivory tower, you're going to seriously tell me that working people in this country would prefer a tax cut to being on the board of Air Canada? Are you serious? Come on.
Well, not if they were personally on the board, they wouldn't. They would like that. But having somebody they've never heard of on the board on their behalf is a different matter altogether.
Nah, I'm just kidding.
Hey, we've run out of our little window this morning already. Jenny, do you got a curse for us?
Well, I've kind of already said my curse. I'm gonna. It's directed towards the Conservatives. Aaron, you had a bit of momentum from last week. Aaron looked good out and about, and I know you love your I know you guys love the studio, but he looks better out. The dynamic is better. If you want to keep the momentum going, I would have him out. I would kind of maybe do once a day in the studio if you really feel you need to keep it. But I would have Aaron out meeting people and doing his events across the country.
My curse is directed at modernity. I'm very mad at modernity. I'm very mad at current and contemporary campaign tactics and reality informed by media platforms and media realities. I'm mad because I can't find an advertisement that I know somebody's read. My algorithm does not permit me to see the pop-up digital ads that various parties are flooding in people. So I have no idea what's actually out there. And as an example, I can't prove to myself that the Liberals have or have not adjusted their paid media approach, because, there was some like big bullshit ads released on YouTube or whatever that barely make it on actual television programs that no one watches anymore, much less reflects what's actually showing up in people's feeds. So I have no idea what's going on. I'm not going to find out what's going on with paid media. And it's all the fault of modernity and digitization and fragmentation. And I just say, I hate that world. I wish we could campaign like we did in the 1970s and 1980s, where you could actually see what you had in your toolkit. So I'm a frustrated old codger.
You need to go outside and like shake your fist at the sky, Scott.
That's right. Don't give me shit.
It's largely happening.
Yeah.
It's largely happening on Facebook and Instagram, and I think the parties are holding back on their buys right now, particularly the Conservatives. To be honest,
I see nothing in my feeds, so I don't know if that's my algorithm or if that's their campaigns.
I think the algorithm has decided that you're a waste of time, that there's no point in showing you.
Well, I guess the algorithm has quite a bit in common with other people in my life.
My curse is to say that I'm going to say that for the first day of the campaign, the Liberals won the day yesterday. If you have a story on the national news in which the leader of the Liberal Party says that the Conservatives support private health care, and the Conservative clip is them denying that they support private health care, that is a win day for the Liberal Party. So congratulations, folks, for cranking that out finally. And that's the end of our show. So thank you, Scott. Thank you, Jenny, for being up here. People, we record this thing at 6:30 in the morning. It's ungodly. I can't even believe we're doing it.
What are you talking about?
But anyway.
I've already been to market to sell Ma's cow for 3 beans by the time we start this podcast.
And I'm still wiping sand out of my eyes at the end of the pod. So that's how it goes. I want to thank our presenting sponsor, TELUS, and our sponsor, CN, Politico, and Nick for being part of this enterprise. I want to thank, obviously, EKOS and Frank Graves, and lastly, all of you for listening or watching. Thanks very much. We'll see you tomorrow.